The old world will burn in the fires of industry. Welcome to Tabletop Shop.
Hello and welcome back to the Tabletop Shop podcast. Today we're diving into the game Aquatica and giving you our thoughts on its goods and its bads. And then we have another versus segment this time. We're comparing the industrial themes of two of our favorite games. I am one of your co-hosts, Nate Clark, and as always, seated halfway across the country from me is your other co-host, Mr. Cody Pennington.
It is my... How you doing?
It is May?
It's me.
Okay.
That's me, say.
It's a cool accent. You should continue that throughout the rest of the podcast, Cody.
Sure, I can do that. See? No, I'm not going to do this. That's terrible.
Yeah, okay. No, it's awful. It's really awful, actually. It's a pretty poor attempt at humor, is what it is.
Thanks, man. I can try to give you my 50s voice here, though, if you'd like. There's actually a fun story behind this. So, I'm starting the Ruibos channel.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, everybody listening, go check out the Ruibos channel. I'll leave a link in the description. It's my new comedy channel where I do comedy things. It's Ruiboss. It's like the T Royboss, but it's different. There's more boss in it. Know what I'm saying?
How many people do you think listening to this episode know that T?
Well, first off, there's probably like 10 people listening to this episode anyway, so I would say none.
Yeah, the odds aren't really in our favor, are they?
No. But anyway, a series I'm about to start, and by the time this podcast episode comes out, the video should be out, I believe. I want to start doing commercials in the 50s style for modern products that would not have existed in the 50s. So I'm going to do a 50s style commercial for the Tesla.
You did this once back in the Way Brothers days, didn't you?
It was a challenge I drew that you had written out for me, which was like make a commercial for a dumb phone, I think.
Yeah.
And I just kind of went with doing like black and white style. But I've actually been trying to learn. It's called the transatlantic accent. Are you familiar with the transatlantic accent, Nate?
No. Is that what you've been doing?
Not at first, but I started doing it later. Here in the podcast. Yeah, the weird thing I did way at the beginning. That wasn't really it. But apparently this is a thing. It's not natively spoken anywhere. It's a made up accent, and it's sort of like a conjoining of British and American, and it's what you hear a lot in kind of 40s and 50s TV shows and radio stuff where it almost sounds British. Because I always thought this. I was like, did people back then just sort of have a mildly British accent in America? But no, it's just apparently it's like a voice you put on for like professional things.
So it was an acting accent to make you sound more proper?
Yeah, I guess in the early 1900s it was invented for like high society people so that any English speaker around the world would use that accent so you could recognize other high society people by the way they spoke.
That's funny because within British, you have that, but it's almost associated with a hierarchy. Like the different accents within British English are associated basically with different class levels.
Yeah, it's kind of odd, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, we kind of were mimicking that in a way, I guess, which is a bit ironic, but...
Well, I try.
Okay,
anyway,
Cody. Intro question. You ready for this?
Yeah,
let's get back to games.
Yeah.
What is your go-to strategy for learning a game? So you get a brand new game, cut it out of the box, punch it out, whatever. What's the best way for you to learn how to play a game?
Sure. It will depend on the weight of the game. If it's pretty simple, I'm usually content just to pull out the rule book and try to kind of learn it real quick. But the majority of the time, I will try to find a video for it, and then I will watch that video, and then I will kind of basically try to set up the game via the rule book and then glance through the outline of everything to make sure I learn everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I used to learn completely off the rules, and then I discovered how to play videos, and I was like, these are amazing. But
you discovered how to click play on a video?
I mean, I never thought to look it up for a while, but anyways.
Oh, I'm sorry. You said you discovered how to play videos. I thought you were saying you figured out how to play a video, and I was like...
No, how to play videos. No.
Anyway, yeah.
But I feel like I'm getting back to wanting to just sit down with the rule book, If I don't know.
Huh.
Like maybe it's not wanting to just watch a video of somebody else doing it and then still have to reference the rules for all, especially for a heavier game. You still got to dig through the rules because like even a comprehensive how to play video, you're going to not retain half of it, for a complicated game. So I feel like I'm kind of getting back to doing it completely off the rule book, and I don't know, we'll see how that goes, because I have a couple complex one I need to learn in the near future, and so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I don't enjoy watching videos. I think it's more efficient and it makes it a little bit easier, but I'd rather just go by the book. But I do find that I have an easier time seeing someone sort of regurgitate and explain a concept as opposed to trying to read it for the first time and you're like, what are they saying here? Like, what?
Well, and I mean, most rule books are pretty good where you have your contents list at the beginning, which titles everything so that when they're referenced in the player book, or when they're referenced throughout the rule book without pictures, you can go back and look and say, oh, okay, that's what that name is. That's what that piece is. And usually there's a lot of good pictures. It just depends on how good the rule book is, I guess.
Yeah, which can be hit or miss, depending.
Okay, this is a long-winded intro. Cody, what did you play this week?
Hey, no, I have an intro question for you. I was telling you about this. Yeah, come on. It was just a random thing I thought of. But Nate, if you designed a game and you released it, you published it, would you rather design a killer game or a game killer?
Oh, well, I would much rather design a killer game. I mean,
okay.
I feel like there's a lot of people, like when you say something is such and such killer, it's a Race for the Galaxy killer, it's a, whatever killer. I feel like there's a lot of people who are automatically like, don't want to touch it for that reason. There's a lot of people that get really excited. They're like, oh, I love Agricola, so I want the Agricola killer. And there's a lot of people I think who are like, oh, I love Agricola, don't you dare say that game is an Agricola killer and I'm, I'm banning it, So I feel like I'd rather just have a game that's just awesome and doesn't need to be compared to something else. Yeah.
Okay, I'll allow it.
All right, what'd you play?
Anyway, what I play this week, I actually have a few new plays I'm excited to talk about.
Yeah, me too.
The first two are games that you have already played before, so I don't know if that's going to be mega interesting. First one is Cascadia. Got that for Christmas.
Yeah.
And I got that along with Acropolis. And Kirsten and I have flip-flopping opinions on this, or opposite opinions on this. So she didn't really care for Acropolis that much, and I really liked Acropolis. And I don't, like, Cascadia was fine, but I liked Acropolis a lot more. And Kirsten prefers Cascadia much more.
So, will both of them get to the table often, or will neither of them get to the table ever?
I think they'll both get to the table on a decent basis. Here's the thing about Cascadia, though, and I think we'll review this soon, since it's finally another new game that we've both played, so we can add it to our Game of the Week list. But for a two-player game, I don't like having to remove 43 tiles, or 42 tiles. That's not fun. It's like half of the tiles of the game.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that.
That's just dumb. I'm fine with games when they say, based on player count, remove 2 to 3 tiles per player, or something like that. When it's like, and now separate literally half of these 87, 85 tiles.
It has to be random. It's not like you can just cut out half and never use them, never mix them back in, and just always have it ready to go. Because then it's not random anymore. It's predetermined which random tiles are going to be used every game. Well, I guess Kirsten will just have to set it up from now on, right? Because it's her game. Sure.
Hey, good point, dude. I'll just let her do it. Yeah. Next, I played Last Will. Also got that for Christmas. Both Kirsten and I were kind of disappointed by this.
Yeah.
It had been hyped up so much, and the theme sounded so fun that when I finally played it, I was just like, this is kind of your average bland Euro with a twist, and the twist just feels kind of dissatisfying in a way.
A little
like
gimmicky.
You're not accumulating points. You're just trying to get rid of everything you have. And I get that's the concept, but it's just so different from every other game you play.
It's been almost a year since I played it now. I think I remember also not being super impressed. And even when I was like, when I think back on the game, it's like I can remember bits and pieces, but I don't remember the game that well, to be honest. It just didn't stick that well in my head. And that's Suchi, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But apparently it's pronounced Suki.
Ah, okay.
At least if you trust Ben Maddox.
Sure, why not? I'll trust Ben.
Ben, if you're listening, we trust you.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. And finally, I utilized the magical services of Board Game Arena to play a free game that had both a tutorial available and a solo mode available.
Whoa, okay.
For Planet Unknown.
Oh, okay.
Have you played this?
I played this like a few weeks ago, and we talked about it on the podcast, actually.
Oh, we did?
Yeah. I played it the same way.
Apparently, it just completely slipped my mind. Whoops.
But go ahead.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. It seemed a little bit long to me for what it is. Like, you're trying to fill up this board with all these little tokens. Yeah. And I think my impression is that digital games play faster than the physical game.
Oh, for sure.
So granted, this was my first time playing, but even playing the digital version, it was like, this feels kind of long for what the game is. So that was kind of my only complaint. But otherwise, it was pretty fun for a polyomino track game.
I think it would not be a game I would want to own physically, because I think there's a lot of replacing tiles in that circular drafting thing. You draft a lot of tiles, which means a lot of tiles are constantly getting replaced. Seems like a lot of maintenance. Like, that's the thing about a digital game, is there is no maintenance. But also, it's harder to, like, I found when playing Planet Unknown digitally, I found that drafting, like, circle thing to be harder to understand. I felt like if I was playing the game physically, it'd be a little bit easier to comprehend. And I just found it a bit weird.
Yeah, it was a little odd. But those are my plays. Okay. I'm proud of them. What did you play this week?
I got a few new ones too. I basically, like, we started consistently going to a game night with a local group, and so I've been learning quite a few new ones through that. So we played Ready Set Bet. This was a really hot one, I think, last year. And it's basically a horse betting game, but it is one person's running the game. They're basically rolling dice and moving horses, and everybody else is in real time betting on the horses. You have, like, chips that you're betting on the horses on.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of, like, different payouts for all the different horses. There's, like, a big game board, and there's different payouts. And so whichever numbered chip you place on different payouts, you're kind of trying to guess who's going to win, who's going to get second, who's going to get third. It's really a bit overwhelming, because there's also a bunch of cards that come out that'll say, like, that you can also bet chips on, that'll say, like, horse 7 beats horses 3 and horses 11. And, you know, like, all these different combinations of horses beating other horses that you can also bet on if you want to. And then there's other cards that flip out of the bottom that have very specific scenarios that you can bet on, like, at least two horses move 3 or fewer spaces over the course of the race, you know, really specific things. And you do this over the course of 4 races, and more things are getting flipped out. And so it becomes more and more kind of hectic. It's a very hectic game, you know, because it's also real time.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Basically, you do it over the course of 4 races, and you also get player powers. Like, in between every round, you get player powers that affect how you can bet and stuff. So it was surprisingly overwhelming, but it was pretty fun too.
So is it just random? Like, is there any skill actually involved in this, or is it just kind of you're placing bets, like randomized bets?
It's mostly just placing bets. It's not super random because, well, I guess it depends on who you ask. A lot of people would say dice get hot, and a lot of people would say dice don't. But and the thing is also there's different payouts. So obviously, like, the 11 horse winning is going to pay out way higher than the 7 horse winning, right? Statistically, 7 has the greatest chance of winning. But then they're balanced with bonuses. So, like, if 5 gets rolled twice in a row, it gets a bonus 2 moves on the track. Whereas if 7 gets rolled twice in a row, there's no bonus. And then 12 and 2 are the same horse, and so stuff like that. I think 2 and 3 are the same horse, and 11 and 12 are the same horse, so odds are increased. And it's just about, like, it's kind of about, like, every spot that you can bet can only be placed only one chip can be placed there. And so, but you get negatives if you're wrong. And so it's kind of like you're competing with the other people to take the spots that you want. But yeah, as the race progresses, you're trying to decide which spots you want. And at a certain point, you can't bet anymore. So it's mostly luck still, but it's simulating horse betting, which again is also mostly luck, I guess, right? Like, you're betting on which horse is going to win, and then you find out. So
yeah, true.
But you're doing it throughout the race. So I don't know. It was fun.
Okay.
Definitely a party game.
Yeah.
Played Seven Wonders Architects. I think this came out last year also.
How is that?
This is, I think it was kind of touted as like a streamlined version of Seven Wonders, which I didn't even really think was possible. When you play this, it obviously is possible.
Okay.
Basically, the way it works is everyone has their own. No, there's a deck of cards. There's like 7 identical decks of cards, and there's one in between all of the players. And so on your turn, and they're face up, so you can see the top card. On your turn, you either take a card from your left stack or from your right stack, and you just get to add it. You just get to play it. So you can see the top 2 cards. You just take one, and you just get to play that card. If you don't like either of them, there's a random stack in the middle that you can just draw the top card, and then you play that one instead. That's all you do on your turn. You just pick one of those 3 options, and you just play a card. There's nothing in your hand. There's nothing like that. And you're just playing cards and trying to collect different combinations of resources to build a little tower thing. That's pretty much it. Like, it's really straightforward. There's still a military system where you can compete with the 2 people next to you for military strength. There's the science tokens are more like Seven Wonders Duel. If you like get a certain combination of science tokens, there's powers in the middle that you can claim, like Seven Wonders Duel. They're a lot easier to get than they are in Seven Wonders Duel, but they're also less powerful. So, okay. And that's really it. And there's a few very minor player powers for each person, but to me, this was not a good game for me. I didn't dislike it. It is very streamlined and it's very clean, but it's like it feels so simple to the point that I felt like I was kind of playing a kid's game. Like, this is a game I would only own if I had children. Like, I don't see any other reason I would want to play this as opposed to Seven Wonders itself. So, yeah, a little too.
What about as a teacher game for new gamers?
I don't know. I would be worried that if a new gamer played this, that they would come away thinking it was too easy also. Like, I don't know.
Really?
I don't know. Maybe I have a bit of a warped perspective. To me, it's just too simple for me to even really get much enjoyment out of it. So, yeah.
Okay.
I played Rainer Knizia's Zoo Vadis. Have you heard of this? This one came out last year also. I think it was last year.
How do you spell that?
A zoo, like a zoo. And then as a separate word, Vadis is Vadis. It's actually a remake, I think, of one of his older games. But this one's really kind of weird, so I'll just kind of explain it real fast and then just move on. Basically, it's kind of a race. And there's a bunch of different spots on the board, and you're trying to move from the bottom of the board to the top with your different animals. But you can only move from a section if you get a majority vote from that section. And so everyone's voting for each other, but that means it's a trading game because you wouldn't just vote for someone. You're competing against them. You want to get somewhere before they do. And so this game's all about trading points and coins and special powers and future trades and everything, future votes for current votes, all this kind of stuff to... And you can have multiple animals, so you can have your own votes. You know, like if you have 3 animals in one spot, that's already 3 votes for your move, which might be enough. You might only need 1 more, whatever. And so there's a bunch of different spots on the board, and you have like 6 movers that you can potentially put out. And so there is definitely strategy about, well, do you want to, spread out your animals so that you can give a lot of votes and get a lot of stuff in return? Do you want to keep your animals clumped together so you can vote for yourself and move faster? There's a lot going on. It's not a race because it's still point-based. It just triggers the end game, and then you score your points, whatever. It was definitely weird, but it was. I do want to play it again because it was such a funky game. So that's Zoo Vadis.
Did it resemble at all? Remember when we played Seven Wonders Duel? It's not the Pantheon expansion. What's the expansion?
Whatever one you have. I don't know.
Whatever that one is, where it's like the Roman Senate type thing, where you're kind of competing. Is it kind of like that?
No.
Okay.
What way do you like? I can't think of any way in which it would be like that.
I guess just the way that you're moving, you're putting down influence to like move people around.
But the people are the influence.
Okay.
So your influence is because it's by voting. And so if somebody has a person in a spot that you're trying to move from, they get a vote or 2 votes or whatever. And so they can either vote for you or not to let you move, basically. It's weird. It's really funky. Okay. Like I said, I won't say much more because I feel like it's just hard to explain without a board and, so. And last but not least, this is one you actually might be interested in, Cody. This is a game that at least I was not very interested in because it got a lot of mixed reviews when it came out. And this is actually a lot like Fantasy Realms. This is like the next step up from Fantasy Realms. Okay? It's a Stonemaier game. This is
Rolling Realms?
No, this is Red Rising.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought that sucked.
Listen, I thought it did too. So somebody brought it to the game group. We played it, and I talked with the guy about it, and he was like, "Well, I think a lot of the negative stuff it got was because it's based on a book series, and a lot of people thought that thematically it didn't connect or whatever, or they didn't do a good job connecting the theme of the books and whatever goes on with the characters with the game itself. They thought it was really disconnected. So apparently, maybe that's where a lot of the kind of negative stuff came from. I don't know. But
I see.
It's basically a lot like Fantasy Realms. You have the same or very, very similar system where you have a hand of cards that are all playing off each other. They're all scoring off each other. They all have a base amount of points they're worth, and then they all have a bonus amount of points that they could potentially be worth depending on what else is in your hand. So that part is very much, it's like Fantasy Realms, but it's more complex because there's more going on the cards. And then there's also a central board. On your turn, you place a card, and you do the action on the card. And then you pick up another card from one of the other 3 action slots, and you get to do the action where you pick up the card from. And the actions are all simple. They're like moving on tracks or gaining tokens or whatever. They're pretty simple. But those are also the end game triggers. Eventually, once you collect a certain amount of whatever, the end game is triggered. But it's very much the same thing where you're stacking your hand and trying to get the best possible combos. And then at the same time, you have this playing cards for actions and picking up cards for other actions. Yeah. I think you should really check it out, honestly, because it feels like Fantasy Realms, but there's definitely more strategy involved. And there's a ton of cards in the deck, but I don't know. I went into it very I was like, okay, I don't know. I don't have any good expectations, and I was pleasantly surprised by it, despite the fact that I didn't like Fantasy Realms that much. Also, I actually enjoyed this one quite a bit. So,
this is only $14.57 on Amazon right now.
Dude, just get it. If you don't
I
like it,
almost
that's
just
$15.
want to grab it. Yeah.
It $15 is nothing if you don't even like it. You know,
it's in the cart, dude. It's in the cart.
Yeah, I think it probably won't be a Fantasy Realms killer but even the setup's not that bad, honestly. It's really not. So I don't know, man. It might be a Fantasy Realms killer. We'll see.
Well, and I feel like I've played out Fantasy Realms a bit at this point. We played
even
it
with
a
the
lot
expansion
when we first got it. Yeah, even with the expansion. So
dude,
maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing.
I really think you should. I have a good feeling about it.
All right, okay. Thanks for the tip, dude.
Yeah.
It's on the list. It's in the cart.
Okay, we better move on here. 20-minute
to our
episode.
Game of the week. Yeah, now 13 minutes later than our time frame should be.
All right. Game of the week. Okay, our game of the week is one that neither of us has played in quite a while, actually. How long has it been, Cody, since you've played Aquatica?
Since I played?
Yeah. I think the last time I played must have been at least a year and a half ago. Maybe closer to, I think it's closer to 2 years, honestly.
For me, September of 2022. So, yeah.
Almost a year and a half? Wow.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Aquatica. Great game. We're not selling this very well.
No, let's do it.
This is predominantly a hand management card drafting game. It has the system of you're playing cards from your hand that have basic actions and let you do things. One of the main things you're doing is you're getting different types of cards from the main market board, and you're adding them to your player board. And these cards that you add all start in kind of the first slot, and then as you activate the cards, you slide them up, and so the top parts of the cards are being hidden by the player board. These are dual-leveled player boards, and you're triggering more actions as you slide the card up and into your player board, and when it finally hits the end, you can score it. That there's points at the end of it, and you don't get those points unless you slide that card all the way up. And so you're using the cards in your hand predominantly to draft those little cards, and then use those little cards to slide up and get bonuses and actions and eventually score them. You can also get there's also improved actions. There's other action cards that you can add to your hand, so you can get more of those. And then there's the little stingrays, right? Those little plastic pieces, yeah. And then there's the stingrays too, which are used for bonuses, but also used for scoring purposes as well. So that's kind of the overview: card drafting, tableau building, and hand management, I guess.
Basically, yeah. The first game I played of this, I was just not getting it. I didn't understand how you would do well at this because it's kind of confusing with those cards. The cards that have resources on them, but you want to move them up. So I think my first understanding was that I needed to use other abilities in order to move these cards up so I could eventually score them. But no, how you do well is you use the resources on those cards in a timely manner so that they move up automatically, and then you're already getting a bonus from them anyway.
And also, a lot of the cards move each other up. So an action on one of those little sliding cards might be to move another card up 2 spots. And there's pros and cons because you just move the card up 2 spots and you might lose some actions on it. But ultimately, everything's means to an end, right? You're trying to get the cards all the way to the top so you can score them.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, let's talk pros, Cody. So for me, the first one, and this is the one I noticed right out of the box, a good production. I would almost say excellent production value. The cards, high quality cards. All the little stingray tokens are pretty cool, honestly, and there's a bunch of them. And there's not a lot else to the game. The dual level player boards are awesome. It just, like, when I pulled it out of the box, it kind of shocked me. Like, I wasn't expecting it to look that good, and it just does. Like, it feels like a high quality game. Even the box is nice. So
it is nice when a box is nice, you know?
It is, man, when they're a little bit thicker. That's another one of those luxury things, you know, kind of like really nice punch boards. It's like, it's just nice.
Yeah. I feel like we always come back to this, but Castles of Burgundy, excellent game, but that, like, Aaliyah company just has those really trashy, thin cardboard boxes. Don't like it.
Well, also, a lot of those original, especially the original production of all those games, were very low budget, which in a way, like, the price is really low on all those. Like, if you get the first printing of a lot of those Aaliyah games, like, they're pretty cheap, honestly, compared to other games. Like, most of them you can get for $30 or less. So, you know, pros and cons, right?
It seems to be that older era, that older generation of games like Monopoly and Stratego, where it's just kind of a lower cost family style game, not super high production going into them. Yeah, things have changed.
Yeah.
Get with the times, Castles. I wonder if their super deluxe extra awesome edition actually has a nice box.
I'm sure it does. It was a Kickstarter.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, enough about Castles of Burgundy. This isn't the Castles of Burgundy podcast, Nate, although sometimes it is. Bringing that back. Yeah, I like the production. I kind of forgot about those double layer boards. It's cool how you can slide a card into them, which, side note, Carnegie has that. Carnegie has these cool double layered boards where you have these long strips of tech token tile thingies that kind of slide in and out on the right side. Just side note, I forgot to mention about that when we talked about Carnegie, and it's cool. But this has it too for cards. But specifically, I really like the stingrays. I don't know how they produce those, if it's just like a molded plastic thing. But then they have,
must have been.
Like, for each player has a different set of them with a different, like, color stamped on them. Those are cool. But then there's the whole set of neutral stingrays. So these are like your workers that you put out to do things with, but you can acquire additional neutral ones. Yeah, it was just kind of a cool concept to use, and definitely the highlight of the game for me, even though it's been a year and a half. I'm like, oh yeah, the game with the stingrays, right?
Is that your first point also then?
Yeah, that's mine.
Sure. The hand management I thought was fine. I don't think it's original. Now, I don't know off the top of my head if I had played another game before I played Aquatica that does the same thing, where you have a hand of cards, you're laying them down, taking actions, and eventually there's a card that's like, okay, pick everything back up. It's kind of the reset card. And you can play that whenever you want to get all your cards back in your hand.
Century also, Golem's like that, and I think you played that.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
that's right. But also you can acquire more cards, but I think the cards you acquire don't go into your active hand, but they also go into your discard kind of. So if you want to get the new cards that you're acquiring, you also need to play that to get them back up. It's a simple mechanism, but it works really well, and you have a ton of control, which I really like. So And it's kind of like deck building in a way. Not really, because you're not cycling through a deck. It's still hand management, but I like that you're adding cards and adding better actions into your hand.
Yeah, what that mechanism reminded me of was Concordia does this, and Concordia did it pretty well. Concordia just lost me because it's super blandly themed. If it was better themed, with more engaging aesthetic and artwork, I think I'd probably be playing it a lot more.
I should look into Concordia because theme in general matters less to me than it does to you.
Yeah.
And I've heard that it's a really good game, so I actually really should.
You should give it a try. If you like the card management system in Aquatica, then you'll really like it in that game because you get to get like there's similar style cards for how they function, but you can get like better upgraded versions and more unique
I like
ones.
that.
Yeah,
Upgrading, man. Upgrading is one of the best things in board games.
Especially when you upgrade the game itself. Know what I'm saying?
All right, what you got?
I like the sliding card mechanism. I like how there's this cool way of using resources from cards in order to advance them. So you're getting like a double bonus off of the cards. They give you a resource to use, and then by using that resource, you get that card closer to being scored. I just thought that was a really clever concept, and I would like to see that more in games, as opposed to always just spending some sort of negative on something in order to improve it. It was a cool double.
I like the sliding mechanism as well. This is also a point I put as a pro for me. Because the concept is, in a way, it's almost gimmicky because it's like you're just kind of progressing through a card and getting more bonuses, and then you get to score it when you're done with the card. But it's like, no. You have dual layered player boards, and you're sliding the cards up into the player boards, and they're being concealed, and you can see very clearly what you still have left, and the rest of the card you can't even see. And so you can much more clearly see what's available to you as opposed to moving on a track or something else like that. So it's a very good implementation of something like that. And there's a lot of potential for things to interact with each other because there's like 4 or 5 rows. So you can have 4 or 5 of those cards going at the same time. So there's a lot of potential for interaction with all the different things they do. So first game I've seen that does that specifically like that, and I think it's a very cool idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I just have one other that I shall list for my 3. I like the competitive objectives. That isn't particularly innovative, but I like how you have to actually spend a stingray to claim it, and you don't get that stingray back. So you're essentially burning a worker for the rest of the game to claim an objective. But once you claim it, you get the most points for that objective. Other people can still score off of it, but the later you go, the less points you get from it. And
decisions like that in games are good. And the way you're describing it now makes me think of Dominion. It's like, when do I start? At what point in the game do I start investing in points instead of actions and coins and whatever, right? Because at the end of the game, all that matters are points, right? But it's about the decision-making process of when do you start investing more into them. Yeah.
Yeah, Everdell, this made me think of Everdell a little bit because Everdell has those 4... Well, no, there's more than that. There's like the objective cards and then kind of the common objectives for every game, like get 3 red cards, get 3 blue cards, whatnot. You can slap a worker on there. The thing is, you do get that worker back at the end of the season, but if you do that earlier in the game, like, actions are really important, so you're just wasting it. Yeah. So it kind of feels
in general. Yeah, anytime you use an action for anything in Everdell, it's painful no matter what.
Yeah.
So
kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's it for me also. So let's talk about some cons here.
Okay.
The sliding mechanism is also a con for me.
Really?
So I was careful when I was talking about what I liked about it. I was careful not to say that I felt like it worked very well. I said specifically that it's a good idea and there's a lot of potential. I did not feel like this, to me, it felt too convoluted. It didn't feel like I could get the combos I really wanted. I found that very difficult. And there's so many cards out on the market, so there's so many possibilities. And then all the times I played the game, I think I played it 3 or 4 times, I struggled to get good combos. And I feel like that's the beauty of it, is that there's so many potential combos, but I actually struggled to really get good things happening there. So I don't know. I just really struggle with that. And I feel like it's such a good idea and I want to see it used again, but I want to see it used in a little bit of a cleaner way. Maybe also the game wasn't long enough too. Maybe that could be part of it too, that I didn't have enough time within a single game to kind of focus in on something. I don't know.
I agree that it was hard to do well with, but my suspicion is that this is more of an efficiency challenge. You have to learn how to play it well, and maybe that's where the satisfaction comes in, is really getting able to use all your cards so well that you can move them all up.
Maybe it's just like there's too many possibilities. You know, like I said, there's so many cards in the market, and you kind of want to take all the actions on the cards you get. Sometimes you take a card for a specific thing, and it feels like there's too much going on to. Maybe my mind just doesn't handle that well, where I feel like I don't have enough direction with those cards.
Yeah. I'm not yet convinced that I can say that I think it was a poorly done mechanism. But I hear your point. I don't have many dislikes. My first one, though, is that I think the art is kind of meh. I'm not going to complain about the background and the landscapes like that. That's pretty immersive and that's cool. But kind of all the characters in the main cards is like, here's like, hello, I am Disney style fish person. Greetings. Welcome to Aquatica.
They're a bit cartoony.
Obviously, that doesn't change the gameplay, but it does change the enthusiasm.
Last for me is kind of just general complaints. I felt like the game, despite the fact that I found the sliding mechanism to be a bit confusing, trying to really do it to the best of my ability, the game as a whole didn't feel that complex, actually. It felt a little too simple. So that's kind of a weird dichotomy almost, of like the game feels simple, but part of the game just feels so confusing and like it doesn't work that well. And I feel like there weren't any, there was no like really satisfying moments, I think. I mean, maybe every once in a while you'd get a nice combo on your little sliding cards, but in general, it didn't feel like there was anything that interesting happening, like you said, you don't have that many cons. I don't have anything else to say either. It's another game that's like just a miss for me. It just doesn't click for me. It's just not that interesting, and I like some of the parts of the game. I like the hand management thing, even if it's a bit simple. I like the sliding mechanism. I want to see this stuff used more. I want to do this more in games. This one just didn't come together.
Yeah, my second and final dislike is basically the same thing. This just wasn't a super incredible game for me. And that's the thing, is it looks and feels like it should be a really cool game, but it just kind of falls short for some reason. It doesn't follow through. So you got the game first, and then we traded you something for it. And then Kirsten and I played it once, and we're like, nah, and we just sold it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of a bummer, because it really does seem like it has a lot of potential and could have been a really awesome game, but just didn't quite hit that mark.
So I think if you like what you've heard about what we've said about Aquatica, give it a shot, I guess. And there is an expansion for it too. Maybe, I don't think I ever looked into the expansion because I just didn't want to invest in that. Could be a situation where the expansion really brings the game up. I don't know, but.
This this is in the Dice Tower's Essential line.
It is.
So the Dice Tower considers this game to be essential. I would disagree, but if you trust their word, then maybe it's worth a try.
Yeah. Of course, trusting their word is how I ended up with it to begin
with. There's the problem there.
People are different, so what can you do? All right. Let's hasten on to our banter here. We have another versus. This one is a bit more specific. We're not just comparing the games as a whole. We are specifically comparing the industrial theme within both Furnace and Brass Birmingham. We'll see how this goes. Our verses so far have been more comprehensive, so this one will be interesting.
Yeah, when I first wrote this down, I was just thinking like, We've kind of just had this on the back burner for a while as a versus idea, and it doesn't seem like something that would work out super well for an in-depth banter, but I was actually able to come up with a few points for it that I am proud of, so I'm looking forward to this.
Okay. Well, why don't you lead us off then?
Yeah. Okay, so if we're talking about the implementation of the industrial theme within a game, that's the focus. I think Brass has a better atmosphere. I think it's superior with kind of this fire and smoke atmosphere. The board shows kind of the British countryside with all the cities. And then even your personal player board is like a focus, a zoom in on inside of one of the cities. And so it's cool how they're double-sided boards, so you can play the day side or the night side. So if you play the day side, there's a lot of smoke and a lot of smog, and you can see the industrialness going on. But then if you flip it over to the night side, then you can see kind of the glowing fire of the furnaces and the forges everywhere. Yeah, it's quite immersive, and I like it. Furnace does decently with it, but since it's kind of all of these sort of paper-colored cards with light backgrounds, it feels a little more abstract, maybe. So, yeah.
My first point is the exact same thing. First thing I wrote. First thing that came to mind. Brass is one of the most immersive games if you were just talking about the vibe, the feel, the look. Like, when I think Brass, I think dark. I think coal. I think this juxtaposition of fires burning on this dark board, you know? Like, there is a very strong sense of theme just within the world. And that's the thing, is it's all real places too, right? These are all real English cities. And so that kind of helps also. It's like, here's Birmingham, here's, you know, whatever, all these different places. It just, wow. Yeah. Like, excellent table presence, and just absolutely nailed the vibe.
My second point is that I think Brass, it has a more thematic usage of resources that seems more intentional as well. So coal, you have to have a connection to a source of coal in order to use it, which makes sense. You're using this for, whether it's the first era, you're using coal to power your steamboats. What do you call those things? Riverboats?
Barges,
those things. And then the second era, you have to actually start spending coal just even to place your rails down, and then you can use things along that line. So that's cool. Iron is supposed to be more abundant, so you can just spend it from anywhere. I don't really understand the use of beer for making a sail. Maybe that's just kind of like a celebratory thing. But either way, Brass is very unique in this aspect already, in the fact that you have to use a resource in a specific way, as opposed to just, oh, look, I have a resource, I'll spend it now.
Yeah, it's one of the most agitating and also beautiful things about the game is
it
like
really is.
Specifically how you use resources, the networking and everything.
Yeah, exactly. I think Brass is a lot better, as opposed to Furnace has that more traditional style and even more abstract feel of, here's a bunch of stuff, and you're just going to move that stuff around into different stuff. And maybe points at some point.
It's just exchange things for points, you know?
Yeah.
It's all math. It's all conversions.
Exactly.
My second point for Brass is very similar, but a bit more general. I kind of just said that I feel like the mechanisms in general in Brass are more thematically integrated. So you have all the networking, you have all the actually spending resources from their place. There is no this like mysterious personal warehouse where all of the stuff you collect goes like a normal Euro, you know? It's like, no, your stuff is in these different cities, you know, kind of like Scythe. You collect resources, but they stay on the board, right?
Yeah.
Other people can use your resources in this game, potentially. So that is really cool. The market with the coal and stuff is, you know, it's just the mechanisms are all, they just make sense. They make more sense thematically than Furnace does by a long shot. You know, Furnace, you're drafting cards, and then you're just figuring out the most efficient combination to produce as much points as you can. You know, so definitely agree.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of that because my third point is part of your second point, which is the networking is super thematic. It feels like industrialization, that you're starting in a spot, you have to build up access to certain resources, and then you can spread out, and then you can get better access to more resources and new opportunities. It feels like the Industrial Revolution. Not that I ever lived through that time, but from my understanding of it, this feels like the Industrial Revolution.
But it's very, like, I don't know if you've ever watched Peaky Blinders.
A little bit, yeah.
But
Brass feels like Peaky Blinders.
It does, man. They both to me are like very, very good representations of a time that I did not live through, but I like how they are idealized. I like how they're kind of immortalized into history, and like this is what this era felt like in a very cool way, you know, and also in a very gritty way as well. Both that show and Brass are both very gritty and just kind of hard, you know. Yeah.
And Peaky Blinders is set in Birmingham, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. Are we about ready to move on to Furnace?
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, let me just say this about Brass real quick, and this is actually just kind of a neutral thing. More of a slam, really. I don't know where the Brass shows up.
No, isn't it like considered the Brass, not the Brass Age? I don't know. Somehow this time period is symbolized by brass, isn't it?
I don't know. The one metal resource in the game is iron, so I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But sure, dude. Would you like to take the positive point first for Furnace?
Yes, so Furnace, I definitely agree with you. The vibe of Brass is better. What Furnace does better, I believe, is the art specifically. I really enjoy the art on the cards. I especially enjoy the subtlety of you can upgrade the cards, and in the art on the other side it's the same place as the first side, but there's some very, very minor differences because it's the upgraded version. I like that a lot. But I just like the Furnace is much prettier. The art is much prettier in the game. Now you're right, you have these white backed cards that just makes the whole feel of the game not feel as immersive as Brass, but the actual art in this game I like a lot more. So kind of a weird point.
Well, there is just more art in Furnace. In Brass, it's just kind of backgrounds, which totally fits. And this isn't a complaint against Brass. I think there's just more opportunity for actual art in Furnace. Yeah. My first point is that it's not saying that Brass doesn't do this as well in a different way, but Furnace, it feels like a grind. It feels like you're grinding gears. It feels like industry. Even if it's all sort of a bit more abstract than Brass, the way that you have to work so hard to get pieces of your engine to acquire and then resources for those pieces of an engine, and then you're trying to make them all work together really well, I think it does a great job of replicating the feel. Again, not that I lived through the Industrial Revolution, but this feels gritty and dirty. Listen, you know what I'm saying?
Cody, if you watch Peaky Blinders, you too can live vicariously through Killian
Okay,
Murphy, so.
Excellent. I'll do that. Is that how you say it? And not Cillian? It's Killian?
Sure. I don't know. That's my guess.
You should ask him sometime. See.
I'll do that. My last point for Furnace is kind of similar. And both games do this, but to me, Furnace really feels like the goal is what you're thinking about the whole time. The goal is money, money, money. I need to make money, right? And Brass, you're like, okay, I need to get points, but there's so much other stuff going on that's not what you're focusing on constantly. Whereas in Furnace, every single thing you do in this game is how am I going to make money? How am I going to benefit directly from taking that card or getting compensated from that card? Because the game is so, in a way, simple. You're just turning resources into other resources and turning stuff into points, right? And that is very much like, okay, I am a businessman. I just need to make as much money as I possibly can and be as efficient as I can. And I think Furnace creates a better platform for that than Brass does.
I'll allow that. I can kind of piggyback off of that with mine. I think there is sort of more engine building in Furnace. I mean, granted, that's basically all Furnace is, just stripped down engine building. But specifically the aspect that assets you acquire in Furnace continue to work for you, that's not necessarily the case in Brass. Mm-hmm. Brass is sort of funky in that your network continues to work for you. But if you get like an iron mine or a coal mine, you put those down, they're sort of these one-off things that give you some resources and then they're done. And maybe they'll score you some points, but even then they're done. Whereas Furnace, everything you get, you continue to use. So like you actually are building up assets that you continue to work and get some stuff out of. So I think that's a plus.
It's kind of weird. It's like you build, in Brass, you build locations that you basically use them up. And then it's like you exhausted the resources or whatever at that area. You know, it's kind of weird. Actually, in a way, that's kind of a thematic disconnect. It's like, well, why can't I still make coal here, right?
Sure.
Like, you know,
the coal done dried up here. Got to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it for me. So,
Okay. Well, I had a third point, and then I realized that it's not super the case. So I'll end with a neutral point. I was going to say that Furnace has better base resources than Brass, because Brass you just have cubes, and then Furnace, yes, you have some coal cubes, but then you have like the little iron-shaped things and the oil barrels. But then I remembered that Brass actually had some decent little wooden barrel things for beer. So they sort of tie, I guess.
Weren't they unpainted, though? Weren't they just like plain wood?
In Brass?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just plain.
Yeah. I mean, not bad. Still nice, right? Better than cubes. But I could see how that's neutral. I think for me also, like the thing is probably both games you can easily get upgraded resources that are cool. But actually the upgraded resources serve, because Brass is more immersive, those upgraded resources would serve you better in Brass as opposed to in Furnace. It's just like you're just cashing things in. You're just trading things back and forth, you know? So I feel like I would never want upgraded resources for Furnace.
Yeah, it doesn't really need it. I do have upgraded resources for Brass, and it's cool because the steel or the iron substitute actually is sort of like bronze iron colored, and they're like these little ingots, and I think it's real metal, so they actually have a weight to them. It's very satisfying.
Yeah, that's great. Almost a must-have.
Definitely a must-have if you like the game.
Well, since this is a versus,
yes,
I have to side with Brass on this one because I mean, and the funny thing is, I think we're different on this, but I actually like Furnace more as a game than I do Brass.
Whoa.
Yeah. But
Heresy.
I can very much. It's kind of no contest really that Brass does a better job with the theme in general. So.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Brass as well. Obviously, I am biased because Brass is my number 2 game. Furnace, I'm looking at, is down here at 36. Quite the difference. But I think overall, yeah, it definitely employs the industrial atmosphere and mechanisms more superiorly, Nate, than Furnace.
Well, there you have it, folks. So if all you care about is how immersed you are in the theme of a game, then Brass is no question the better choice for you.
And if all you care about is a better game, Brass is the game for you.
Well, disagree to agree. I do have, before we end, Cody, I have one other thing I want to bring up. This is not about Brass and Furnace anymore. We're past that. This is something else.
Okay.
This is something that was announced just a couple days ago, I believe. And so by the time this episode comes out, this will be old news probably to most people.
I bet I know what you're going to bring up. Because I was going to bring it up as well. Then I forgot about it. But you go ahead.
What we got to talk about Wormspan, man.
Yeah,
we got to talk about it.
I'm excited.
You know what's weird is that I don't really like Wingspan that much, and I'm excited. You know, like part of me is funny. Like, isn't this a cash grab? I feel like it's a cash grab. I want to say it is, but also it's definitely a different game. It's just there's a lot of similarities, but it's also definitely going to be a different game. Mm-hmm. And man, is it going to do well. It is going to do so well.
Oh, for sure.
Like, it's going to be phenomenally successful. Yeah. Wingspan's success was like unanticipated, you know, unprecedented almost. But Wormspan, we know now this game is going to be huge. This game is going to be wow.
Yeah. So
I'm pretty stoked, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell right now like how well Apiary is doing. It seems like it's doing pretty well, but that's Connie Vogelman, the designer of that, is the one who made Wormspan with Elizabeth Hargrave, her influence.
So they're co-designing this one.
Yeah, I think in Elizabeth's words, it was more the base game of Wingspan, like Elizabeth's inspiration, but I think Connie did most of the work on this.
So maybe Elizabeth was like a consultant on Wormspan or something.
I think
like
so.
That.
I could be wrong where I saw that, but that was my impression from it. And it was also described as a more meaty, like more complex version of Wingspan, and I'm all about that. Let's bring it on.
Also, they're getting rid of the dice, which I love because that's one of the worst parts of Wingspan.
Well, dude, that's just because dragons don't use bird feeders. They just eat people. And remember, we will drive the machine of war with the sword and the spear and the iron fists of the orc. And welcome back to the outro. That's all I have to say.
Why do you say back? Why do you always say welcome back, Cody?
Because well, we're not resuming the outro. I'm saying welcome back, basically to the rest of the thing, to all the people who stuck around.
Let's hurry up and get through the outro so that people can hurry up and go listen to more of our episodes, more of our content. Make sure you check all the boxes, do all the subscribing and liking and commenting that is expected from you, and also thank you for listening.
Yeah, and could you share? Share is probably more important than even liking. You could just do that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And welcome back to not listening anymore.